Hi guys, HC625 VRMAX is here, and I'm happy to present you the new Simchair VRMAX collective head with the radio panel that has quite a lot of knobs on it, and it's quite an interesting device that I want to talk about and show you its capabilities. So we're sitting in the Dreamfoil 407 in X-Plane, and in this video we won't be flying anywhere, so we have our ground power unit connected, and we'll be talking about the radio panel and the navigational stuff, altimeters, etc. Stuff like this that uses knobs. So let's start with the review of functions of the new radio panel. This head is the standard Bell 412 collective head that has been there for a while already, so I wouldn't be talking about it because nothing is new here on hardware side. So let's look at our new radio panel. I will refer to this part as a radio panel and this stuff as side panels. So what we have here are 7 knobs. This is quite a lot. Each knob works as 2 buttons. One button is pressed when you turn it left, and another when you turn it right. So the cool thing is that all these switches here, basically most of them are special switches that work as this little mode switch on the collective, which actually maps these knobs, these 7 knobs, and there are 2 joystick buttons per knob, to different sets of joystick buttons. So this device uses around 90 joystick buttons in total, which is actually quite a lot, and it allows us to map pretty much everything to this nice panel. Let's look at it closer. So now we have our radio panel on. So as I said earlier, I will refer to this part, this panel, as a radio panel. That's because these 4 knobs manage the radios of our radio stack. So these switches allow us to map these 4 knobs to different functions. Let's talk about them. This top switch is the stack device selector switch. So what it does, it maps these 4 knobs to different sets of joystick buttons, which by default should be assigned to different radios. So here we have COM radio side, fine tuning and coarse tuning. Here we have nav radio side, fine tuning and coarse tuning. This switch is here for switching between nav 1, nav 2 or transponder. So as you can see, now we have it assigned to nav1, so we can use this knob to tune our desired frequency, and this knob for fine-tuning. Same thing with our nav radio. And then we can use the push buttons of these knobs. Each knob is equipped with the push button. We can use them to flip the active frequency of our radios. So when I flip it to the middle position, it now handles COM2, and in this case the standby frequency of the nav1 radio, because this particular helicopter is not equipped with the nav2 radio. It only has one navigational radio. So in the bottom position, which is signed as XPDR, it drives the transponder knobs. So as you can see, the transponder is turned off right now, so we can turn it on by flipping this switch, which is the transponder mode selector switch. So what we do, we flip it, and you can see that our transponder is now set to standby mode. So we can set it to ground mode by flipping the switch up, or we can set it to the default middle C mode, which is generally used. So these four knobs are now mapped to the altimeter. Another interesting feature, as you can see in the in our radio stack, we have the ADF radio as well, but our mode switch only has 3 positions. So because of this, to drive the ADF switch, to drive the ADF radio knobs, what we do is we switch this little navigational mode selector switch to the middle position, which is marked as ADF here. And now this you can see that this switch is in transponder position and this switch is in the middle ADF position. In this particular combination of switches, we can use these 4 knobs to turn ADF. It's a separate joystick buttons set. Separate set of joystick buttons to that these physical knobs are mapped. So if I will switch the navigational switch back to nav1, I can drive the transponder again. If I flip this switch to any of other modes, 1 or 2, I can drive the corresponding function with it. And the nav switch will only affect the OBS knob, which I will talk about in a few moments later. Then here this button is ident button, and this switch is the panel mode switch. So panel mode switch maps the whole radio panel, these 4 knobs, to 3 different sets of joystick buttons. So the whole radio sync and its special, this switch, for example, this stuff, this function where the ADF mode of the switch, it only works when this panel mode switch is in the middle. What this means is you can flip the switch up or down, and you can see that nothing changes on the radio panel regardless of what I do here. That means that it's a completely different set of joystick buttons, and you can use it, for example, to assign something that is present, something special that is present on your aircraft, like panel lights control, or maybe DME or some GPS stuff. So it's quite useful feature. That's pretty much one last thing about the radio panel. All of the buttons stay, they only have one joystick button assigned to them. In any mode they will press the same joystick button. So this is cool because for example, I want to set up my ADF radio. Yeah, you can see I set some frequency here on the ADF radio, and then I understand that I need to I want to do it for some next leg of my flight, and right now I want to switch between the NEF standby and active frequencies, so I can do just that with this button press, because it's always, or maybe I want to maybe I want to press ident to acknowledge my position to the controller. So all the buttons of this device are always mapped to the same function, regardless of any of the special modes here. That's pretty much it about the central part of this panel and its modes. So let's talk about side panels. As you can see, we have 3 knobs here in total on these panels, and 2 switches. These are 3-way switches each. So let's talk about mag knob. It is used for adjusting directional gyro of your aircraft. So this knob is always assigned to a set of 2 joystick buttons, a separate set of 2 joystick buttons. It's the same in any mode, so regardless of whatever the rest of the stuff is set to at the moment, you can always adjust your directional gyro with few turns of this knob, because it may be needed regardless of the mode. Then The next knob is marked OBS, is for managing NEF radios. So this switch flips, it switches between between navigational radios. First one is NEF1, it's for viewer indicator 1, so you can set it to top position. And oh, sorry, let's look at our panel. You can see that our viewer indicator needle is turning. Then if we set it to ADF middle position, you can see our ADF needle is moving. Bottom position is for VR2, but it isn't present in this particular helicopter, so also note that all the stuff I'm talking about, I mean about some functions, which is what, like top position is for VR, middle is for ADF. It's basically just joystick buttons, so you can map whatever you want to it, but note that some special functions, like what I have told you earlier about the ADF setup and stuff like this, they are mapped with some particular switches set up in mind, so keep this in mind. Let's talk about the right panel, which has the altimeter setup knob. This switch has 3 positions. The top one is for parametric altimeter. You can see that I can turn its knob. The bottom one is for radial altimeter. Sadly, although this 407 is equipped with radar altimeter, I haven't found the radar altimeter control assignment for it. Maybe it has some data ref, I'm quite sure of it, but just need to look at it closer. Anyway, in this bottom position, this knob will be mapped to a different set of joystick buttons. Then here in the middle position, our altimeter is locked, so we won't accidentally turn it while flying, and there won't be any adjustments made by mistake, which because this stuff can lead to some really bad situations. So I thought it will be a good idea to make a lock position. So that's pretty much. You can also press this button anytime to set your altimeter to 2992, which is fine. It may be useful as well. Then this is pretty much all of this panel's functions. So the last thing I want to mention is note how the shape of these knobs is different. So basically it's made for tactile feedback. Actually I tried navigating this panel while not looking at it, and it's quite cool because it's totally possible, and you always know what knob you're touching right now because of their special position. You can see that for example these two knobs are slightly wider apo is slightly wider than the top ones. This stuff has some particular shape that can be easily recognized with your hand, you know, when you're touching around. Here it's also a very distinct shape that is different from all other, you know, surfaces here. So it's totally made for VR. It's important because, you know, before that I used my mouse to fly and operate radios and knobs and stuff like that. So every time I wanted to call for, you know, to tune to AVOS and find whatever the altimeter setting should be at this particular area. I had to do it like this, and it was a huge pain because, you know, I had to keep my helicopter flying straight and level, and it pretty much was impossible because you know, I couldn't see anything at all, and obviously my flight path was badly obstructed by this kind of stuff. So I personally think this is the most important addition to the Simchair, since, you know, the collective lever itself and cyclic and stuff like this. So basically it's epic as a separate device, really. I think it will kind of make Simchair, you know, different from everything else in a good way. So I strongly suggest that you guys try this thing, because in my opinion it's quite epic. So I will publish the instruction manual for this thing in a couple of days. It's all the steps required to assemble this thing are already recorded. It just needs some formatting and you know, stuff like parts list, etc. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope that you liked the video. If you have some comments, questions or suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact me through comments or my site hc65ma.org, or in whatever way you find appropriate. Again, thanks for watching. See ya.